Hi, everyone, and welcome to Coffee and Conversation right here on Yachting International Radio. My name is Ria, and I am your host, and I'm really pleased to introduce the lovely Captain Ben. I didn't quite get
it. Thanks, Ria. And on that note, I'm out of here.
Yes. Well, I mean, you have earned the title. You have done the work. You have become a captain, and it's taken you, you've been a captain for what, 23 years now?
23 years, yeah, exactly. So it's
So I
been a
mean,
while.
that's something that you should be proud of. And I won't refer to you as Captain Ben, but I would like everybody to know that you have gone through the effort of becoming a captain and have kept that position for 23 years, and it is not something to be sneezed at. So congratulations.
Thank you very much. And thank you for having me here as well.
Yeah, no, it's lovely. It is lovely to meet you. You're very inspirational, actually. The reason, just to let the viewers out there know and listeners, the reason that I got in touch with you was because, of course, Lars Molen, on Palma Yacht Crew, he's got all these sort of things that happen all the time. Everybody knows Palma Yacht Crew and the Yacht Crew sites on Facebook around the world. And you happened to comment on a comment that was mentioning a captain that gave their crew an hour sort of paid time in the morning, as long as it was time that they were exercising or taking care of themselves. And you had commented on that, saying that you did the same thing. And I thought, wow, this is something that I really want to talk about, because we are in the midst of, I would say, a bit of a crisis in the industry. We're seeing issues with mental health. We're seeing issues with health straight across the board. And it's really refreshing to see captains say, you know what, take care of yourself physically. And that's part of what we want in order to get the best out of our employees or our crew. Why did you start doing that?
A couple of reasons, really. One, it was purely selfless initially because I do a lot of endurance sports, triathlons, long distance riding, marathons, that kind of stuff. And to get the amount of training in that you need, I was up early exercising. And then I just thought, as more and more crews started to get into that, why not make it a thing where if you're doing something for yourself in terms of fitness and sport, make that part of the day. And in doing so, I found that the attitude on board changed dramatically when you had 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, half your crew, more than that, exercising in the morning. They were starting work as though they'd achieved something. And so even before they started their actual day job, they've run a couple of K. They've cycled, 10, 15, 20, 60 kilometers, whatever it is. They've actually achieved a goal. And I guess in some ways, part of it comes back from, there's a really great YouTube video of a retired admiral, Navy Admiral SEAL, who talks about the importance of making your bed in the morning. And I've used that in crew briefings before because it's, again, saying, you make your bed, you achieve something, so you can have the worst day of your life, you get back into a freshly made bed. Same kind of principle. You do something for yourself in the morning, you're feeling fit, you're feeling healthy, your actually approach to your working day is way more positive than it would be if you're waking up with a hangover or just a bit sluggish and feeling like, oh, God, right, 10 to 8, I've got to get dressed, run out and start work. And it works. It really works.
Well, I mean, I think we've seen a change in a number of ways straight across the industry in the past decade and a half. We've seen not only the industry owners, the yacht owners themselves, they're a younger demographic. They themselves are looking for much more exciting and exotic locations. They're looking for excursion type events as opposed to cruising the Med. They're looking to experience things that nobody's experienced before. So I would imagine that having a fitter crew is actually more of a bonus in that end of things.
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, there's an example I always use with charter guests. We specifically did a 12-day charter in Croatia for an amazing American family who's remained really good friends ever since. And they wanted to go cycling every single day. And it was down to me to organize, to take them on the cycling routes. And it was probably, I would say, the best charter that I've ever done because the interaction was there. There was a common goal. And, every day was something different. I think had become used to going into the same port, the same island, the same restaurant, on and on and on it goes. You get on a bike, you get taken for a run, you see so much more of these locations than if you're just doing the normal stuff. So there is a huge benefit for what you can offer to charter guests.
Well, and do you think too that's affecting the way that, in the past crew have been seen as these party animals and they drink just as hard as they work? Do you find that with this sort of new explosion within the yachting industry that that is changing as well? And more crew are not interested in hanging out in the bars and getting drunk every night, but they're actually more interested in, mountain climbing and other biking such as yourself.
Um, Yes and no. I think like attracts like at the end of the day, and you still see, a lot of boats where you've got the crew hanging off the back of the passerelle, smoking, drinking, and they're the guys that the boat looks a bit shabby, and they look a bit shabby in the morning. And then conversely, you've got the guys who are, you know, 5 o'clock, they're out running. 8 o'clock in the morning, they're coming back from a run, and those are the guys that I think seem to be giving more back to the industry in terms of expectation management and positivity.
Well, now, as far as basic health, really,
Mm.
what does that type of exercise first thing in the morning do for your mental health?
Huge. It's one of the reasons I got into exercise in the way that I do, and do the sort of the long distance stuff, because for me it's stress management, which has become a huge part of our job as a captain, as I'm sure you know, and it's becoming more and more, I'd say, discreetly talked about at the moment in our industry, which is a good starting point. But I find sort of going for a long run or a long swim, especially, is a great way to clear your mind, to set yourself up for the day, to block out all of the things that you don't really need to focus on. And so you can just come back and feel like, right, okay, now I know where my focus is and I can get going. Similarly, if you've had a bad day or you've got a situation perhaps with another crew member that you need to deal with, it gives you that sort of solitary moment to go away and put everything into perspective and then come back and be able to deal with it in probably a much more calm and reasoned approach than if you're hungover or you're still stressed or you haven't got time or you haven't made the time to think these things through. So that to me is an important reason why I do it.
And I mean, mental health right now is something that is very, it's huge across the industry. A lot of people are talking about. We've unfortunately lost, a few yachties in the past few years
Mm.
through mental health issues. Do you think, as a captain, that dialogue is becoming something that men are becoming more comfortable with on board?
I think we're very, very slowly getting towards that point where um, the senior ranking um, crew members are starting to actually take note of the impact of mental stress within the industry and within the job. Before, you would never approach a captain if you had a mental problem or you were worried about something, because they were this sort of officious, godlike figure that was it. They drove the boat and their word was black. It was black, and that was that. Now I think we have to take on much more of a responsibility towards our mental health and that of the crew that work with us. And so it's a real problem. It's like having a broken bone. It's even worse because you don't see it until sometimes it's too late.
So with health as well, does your food choices on board change, or are they still the same way that you would see in a crew mess hall?
No, definitely. Any chef that I hire, it's one of the first questions I ask them is, describe the food you'll do for the crew. And if it's a sort of, lasagnas and baked potatoes and beans, it's like, right, okay, that's not what I'm into. We've seen a massive change in attitude, particularly with younger crew, when you remove the chocolate, the Coca-Cola, all of that stuff from the naughty cupboard in the corner, and you put in the nuts, the goji berries, the protein bars, and you're giving them healthy food. Or probably, I think we do more of a sort of a healthy, balanced diet. So rather than having all the big, heavy carbs and all that kind of stuff at lunch, it's much more healthy. So you're not getting that 2 o'clock dip that you used to see. And then, of course, everyone starts hitting the coffee. They start hitting the Coca-Cola, or the sweets, the candy bars, fill them up with chocolate and send them back out. Luckily, I would say there is becoming more of an awareness that is actually detrimental to your health, whereas eating healthily is beneficial.
So are you finding that these attitudes are changing straight across the industry? So more and more yachts are sort of adapting this concept of, let's get these guys exercising, let's get them eating right, because we're going to have more productivity and we're going to have a happier crew?
I think it's like everything in our industry; it has to filter down from the top. And I think I saw some of the responses to that post on the website, on Facebook, sorry. And I would say 90% of the responses were, God, it would be great if we could work with somebody like that. You know, how do we get our captain to adopt these principles and these ways of running the crew and the food on site? You can only drive it yourselves. And with a captain and a boat that are that way inclined, it's going to start setting an example. And I am seeing more of it. I mean, you know, we were actually next to Hampshire 2, which are well known for having a great physical program on board due to their owner, Jim Radcliffe. You know, he's run marathons, he's done triathlons, he sponsors GBR, America's Cup team, and they're all out. You know, they're out exercising. And I think you've got to think that is setting or starting to set an example across the board. You know, you go to Antigua, and I would say definitely in the last 10 years, you're seeing much more crews going running, going swimming, all that kind of stuff. So it's, yes, I think is the answer. It is starting to come across, but it's got to be driven by crew if it's not being led by the captain.
Well, I mean, we're seeing the changes with plastics and the environment and everything else that has started out of sort of a crew-driven movement. And it is changing the industry as a whole. So, you know, exactly as you said, if the crew is sort of pushing towards, and of course you have to be careful sometimes because, as you said, there are still some old school captains out there that when they say black, it's black. But I mean, everybody just pushing in that direction could just make it a healthier industry. Speaking of health, you actually in 2018, you became president of Cogs for Cancer.
Yes, I did. Yeah. It's a charity that was very dear to my heart, and I decided to take over running it because I wanted to keep the charity going and to take it a bit more worldly on a global scale.
Because you didn't have enough to do.
Many would say the same thing.
And you actually take part in this ride every year, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. This last one was pretty challenging, and we set out with that goal in mind. It was 8 countries, 8 days. Ended up being about 1,400 kilometers, and we did 16,000 meters worth of ascent, so that's almost twice the height of Everest.
And that was, so 8 countries in 8 days.
Yeah, so we started off in Holland and ended up in Monaco, and they did the tribute ride into Antibes, which is what we normally do. And this year we raised a good amount of money for the charity, which was very rewarding.
Well, you know, something interesting we were talking about off air. You had said that almost 50% of the proceeds, correct, goes to the Cancer Research UK. Now, as a Canadian, whenever I hear somebody within the EU, and more often than not, especially when we're talking expats, when they're raising money for cancer, it's going to the Cancer Research UK. And I always wondered why. But tell us what Cancer Research UK actually does with these funds.
Well, so that's the thing. We try and earmark our funds, especially for me, into their new and innovative research development programs. So, for example, immunotherapy is one area that we try and target the money into. But more sort of worldwide, I think the statistic is they sponsor about 70 different programs in 70 different countries across the globe. And as a result of that, they're able to become much more target specific quickly with fighting new strains of cancer, as opposed to the perception, which is, well, it's just in the UK and all they're doing is funding research in the UK and facilities in the UK. It's absolutely not the case.
See, and that's great to hear because it does answer a question that and if I had it, well, maybe I'm just original, but I'm sure there were a few out there that probably had the same sort of questions. It's really good to know. I was really thrilled to sort of find out that there are 70 countries that are being benefited from this money that is being raised.
Yeah, exactly. And it is, to be perfectly frank with you, it's one of the first questions we get asked, or I get asked, particularly by the local benefactors here in the south of France, is why do you give so much money to the UK? And you go, well, actually, you may well find that some of the treatment that your patients have been receiving has been through their research. And if it wasn't for that funding, your guys wouldn't have the treatment they have today.
Yeah, that's brilliant. So what are your plans in the future then for Cogs for Cancer? Where are you taking? What's the next step?
2020 is going to be a big year for us and for me in terms of endurance and where I want to go. With the charity, one of the things that we're exploring is more of a sort of an online cycling club. So cogsforcancer.cc is probably going to become live fairly soon. And with that, you become a member for a year. You'll pay a subscription, get a club shirt. You'll get a list of the events that we're going to be doing and taking part with and partnering across the sort of yachting community. And more of a forum as well. So I think I was sort of saying earlier off air, if you're part of the Cogs for Cancer Cycling Club, you go on the forum, you say, hey, listen, I'm in Antigua. Who wants to go for a ride on Sunday? Somebody says, peeps back, yeah, I'm in Antigua. Let's hook up. Let's go. So it becomes more of a social thing as well as a charitable tool. And that to me, I think, is quite important because we've been perceived as well by many as it's this elite sort of clique in the south of France that, if you're not based around here, you don't really get to take part in Cogs for Cancer. My idea is to take it globally. So Flibs, Antigua Charter Show, do something in St. Martin. And, for you, with Stevie Branner, RSB Rigging, we got him on board for this ride. And if you know Steve, he's Mr. Enthusiastic about cycling. So we're going to get him to put on an event in Palma as well.
Nice. So it is definitely going to be everywhere, and everyone's going to have a chance to participate and get as fit as they possibly can. I can imagine you've got to be pretty fit to do a lot of, especially the 8 days or the 8 countries in 8 days. You have to be really fit for that.
For that one, yes, you had to do a lot of training, but the idea is as well that I want to try and open this up to people who perhaps don't have the time to do all the training that's necessary. So by doing, one-day events, you don't have to put that much training in. You can just turn up and have some fun. And we might try and split it and say sort of, okay, this is like a family-orientated event as opposed to this is a serious, you need to have a good amount of fitness to do the next one. And then people can pick and choose how they want to get involved and what that will mean to them as well, which is important.
I just had one of those visions plop into my mind about the fact that, if I went out and I did a one-day cycling event, I wouldn't be able to walk for an entire week. I can guarantee you.
You know what? You'd be surprised. And don't forget, literally everyone started somewhere. I got into cycling because I was sat in a project office in Pendennis feeling pretty overweight. And our engineer at the time, Jimmy, he had been part of I think it was the British Navy time trial team. And he was talking about it. I thought, right, okay, I'm going to buy a bike because this is pretty cool. And the only reason I bought the bike was because I thought it looks pretty cool. And then I thought, right, well, now I've got it. I've got to do some cycling. And I threw myself into it, as many of my family will say is pretty typical of me. And I ended up doing this thing called the Help for Heroes ride from Saint Foy down to Juan-le-Pin. And that was tough. But again, there, you're sort of puffing and panting going up the hill. There's some guy who's been blown apart by an AEG in the Gulf War who just pings past you, and you're like, right, okay, that puts life into perspective, doesn't it?
Well, there's something about certain people in Lycra that just kind of frightens me too, to be honest.
Yeah, well, they do say that the mammals are a rare breed.
Well, I remember in the village where I used to live, I remember seeing somebody who really should have invested in new Lycra because it seemed to have been washed a little bit too often and probably would have been a bit too small to begin with. So you can imagine the vision as they were riding in front of you. Wasn't the nicest thing in the world, but I commend you definitely for taking over this project with everything that you have on your plate and your vision for the future. Now, there is one other project that you were involved in, and it's something that is going to be coming this way very soon. It's manufactured in Barcelona, isn't it?
It's not manufactured in Barcelona. We're manufactured in the States, and we've just opened up the avenue to bring it into Europe. It's a drink that I'm involved in called Legend, LGND. It's a nootropic drink, so it's a cognitive enhancer, which basically means, it makes you slightly more alert. So it's a healthy version of Red Bull. And we've gone to the market in the US and had very, very good success there across the board. We're making our second batch that'll be out towards the middle end of February, and that you can start buying in Europe. And we're definitely trying to get it more into the yachting market. So if anyone wants to try it, let us know. you know how to get hold of me.
Well, we'll definitely put all the details. Do you have a can there that you can show us?
Oh, well, it just so happens I do.
Oh my gosh.
One of the, look at that. There you go. So,
It looks
drink
very
legend.
legendary as well. Do you know what? I mean,
It
it's
is.
one of those things that holding, you look pretty cool holding that too.
You do look very cool holding that. Trust me, it works.
Well, we were talking off camera about the Red Bull, the original Red Bull, when it was only
Yeah.
sold in health food stores. And it was just a little tiny vial of the most, it was actually really foul tasting. It was really
Yeah.
nasty tasting, but it was like a thick, like, I don't know, syrupy thing. And you would take that and literally it worked. I mean, it worked. It
Yeah.
tasted like death, but it worked and it gave you the energy and it was all natural. I mean, because realistically, you know, at the end of the day, a lot of these herbs that you take that do good things for you, they don't necessarily taste the best. But the
No.
original Red Bull, it kicked butt, and you were off and flying and doing great, and you didn't have any of that. You know, coffee, it makes you sort of sick to your stomach at stages and whatever. But then all of a sudden they decided, because it was getting so popular out of the health food stores, they decided to stick it full of sugar and stick it on the shelves and compete against things like Coca-Cola and everything else. And the health food version kind of disappeared. And I was really disappointed because I tried the Red Bull version that they sell in the stores and it tastes nothing like it's not nice.
No. Well, that's, you know, we have two different flavors. We've got the black one, which is the original, and then we've got Silk, which is a slightly more subtle flavor, a softer flavor. And ours it's basically grapefruit and sort of cayenne pepper, cardamom, that kind of thing. So it's got a little bit of a spicy kick. So you can do what everyone in the yachting community did, which was instantly mix it with vodka, and it tastes great. For the guys who've been in Bermuda, they'll know Dark and Stormies, and obviously the black one tastes just like a Dark and Stormy, but obviously it's not going to get you drunk. So yeah, obviously I'm biased. It's a great product. It's a really good taste, and go buy it, try it, and see what you think.
But essentially, you came up with this product to give people energy to cycle or to continue their day, or a healthy alternative to something like Red Bull, essentially.
Yeah, it was the brainchild of a chief engineer that worked with us when I was running Turquoise, Seb, and he believed in it so much. He came to. I remember the day he came to me and said, look, I'm going to run with it. I'm going to resign. And I was like, right, okay, I'm going to support you with this. And a whole bunch of us from the crew, 3 or 4 of us, backed him to do it. And it's live. It's come to fruition. So if nothing else, we're not going to become, the next Murtagh Kent from Coca-Cola or anyone like that. It's been a fun project, and it will hopefully grow into something really good. But the idea was something that's healthy, something that does keep you focused during work, and was a lot of fun.
And it wasn't necessarily made for mixing with vodka.
No, that was just a secondary thing that, of course, we just did. So
it doesn't matter. You can mix it with whatever you want, right?
Yeah, exactly.
As long as you drink it. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure having a conversation with you, and thank you so much. And hopefully your story inspires other captains and crew as well to sort of look at the concept of maybe taking on board your ideas and implementing them on their very own yacht, because we have seen over this past few years that the yachting industry is in need of a change for each individual, as far as mental health, as far as physical health. There needs to be a change. And the fact is, if it can start with someone like you being open and honest and telling people, your story and how you've made those changes on board, that'd be great if other people could do the same.
Absolutely. Anyone who wants to find out more about how I've made it work for the crew and what I generally think the benefits are, just please drop me a line. I'm happy to share this kind of stuff because I believe in it, and it does really work. Well,
what I'll do is I'll make sure when I post this interview and we air this interview, I'll make sure to include your email address, if that's all right.
Absolutely. Definitely. Yeah.
And that way people can get a hold of you. And of course, I'll include a link to Legend.
Thank you.
And Code for Cancer, if you're interested in that as well.
Yeah. Okay. That sounds great.
So we'll make sure all your bases are covered.
Fantastic.
Right. Thank you again, Ben. I hope you have a great afternoon. And thank you, everyone out there, for listening. This has been another episode of Coffee and Conversation right here on Yachting International Radio.